Hi, so welcome back to another episode on Noah's Ark, and today we're going to talk about CDs and how you can prepare your songs for CD manufacturing using a DDP file. So at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how you can create a DDP file for free. But let's start by going through the specifications of a CD. CDs are kind of, outdated now, but, musicians still distribute and manufacture CDs, and it's really important for live gigs when you want to sell merchandise and things like that. So a CD has these kind of restrictions that are described in this standard called the Red Book standard. And the Red Book standard states that you can only have a maximum of 74 to 80 minutes of music on a physical CD. That's good to know, to not go over that limit, because otherwise it's going to be hard to encode that data on the physical CD. And then you can have a maximum of 99 tracks on a CD. And each track has a couple of subdivisions that you can put. And these are called indices, so index. You can have a total of 100 indices on one specific track, but usually people only use index 1. And index 1 is where the CD player is going to start the song when you select a specific track. But there's an index before that's called index 0. And that gap between index 0 and 1 is called the pre-gap. And that usually is a couple seconds. And so, for example, when you play a track from a previous track naturally into the other one, it's going to go through index 0 and then 1. And so you're going to hear that pre-gap. These indices are important because you can actually hide some tracks using those. So first method to hide a track is actually to put it at index 0 of the first track. So when you put the CD in, the CD player is going to play from index 1 of the first track. But you can actually put content before that. And if you put that track at index 0, the only way the person can listen to that track is by rewinding from the initial start point. So that's one way to hide a track. The second way is to put it really far along in the track number. So for example, you can put it at track 99, and you can even put it at index 2 or 3. So when the person selects track 99, they won't even hear the song yet. They need to wait or fast forward to where index 2 or 3 is in that last track to be able to hear the track. So those are kind of different ways you can use indices to hide tracks. Also, there's a specification on the format of the audio that you can put on the CD. So the audio needs to be in the stereo format, first of all, and be in 16-bit in terms of bit depth and 44.1 in terms of sample rate. So if your content is 24-bit, for example, you would need to lower the bit depth and dither. So dithering is a process that allows you to eliminate some unwanted noise by actually applying a bit of noise, and then downsample also if your content is above 44.1. What you need to create a CD is a DDP file. And the DDP file is what's sent to the manufacturing or the CD burning software to be able to describe the CD. So that's why it's called the disk description protocol. And on the DDP file, basically it's composed of 5 different files. So you have the data first, which is in a DAT file, which is this huge chunk of data. So one super long file with all the songs, the whole album on it. And this is going to be chopped up to be able to be put on the CDs at specific points. And so how do you describe how it's chopped up? Well, these are the 3 files that are coming up next, which is the DDP ID, DDP MS, and PQ descriptor. And these are kind of files that are going to tell the burning software how to chop up the content. So we're not going to delve too much into that. But the last file that's in a DDP container is called a checksum. And that's an optional file that you can add, but it's really important because it allows to check the integrity of the content of your audio file. So when you send, for example, the file to a manufacturing plant or to someone else, you want to make sure that the content, the data wasn't corrupted in the transfer. So use the checksum to be able to verify that the content is identical to when the DDP file was created. So that's the checksum, the last file in the package. So how do you actually create a DDP file? Well, there's this free software that I'm going to show you, which is going to allow us to create a DDP file from two different files, actually. So the first file is the actual audio. So you're going to need to create a either WAV file or MP3 or any kind of standard audio format file, but in one single super long file. And then the second file is going to be called a cue sheet. And the cue sheet allows you to describe the information on the CD, so where the tracks align and specific information about the songs and the artist. So for example, you can put obviously the artist name, the names of all the songs. You're going to need to put all the index you want to use. So you need to put the time code for the index 0 and index 1 of each track. So at least these two indices. And that time code is going to be in this weird format called CD frames. So there are 75 CD frames in a second on a physical CD. So you're going to have to do a little conversion that I'm going to show you. And then you can also put the ISRC codes, which are the International Standard Recording Codes that identify all your songs. So that's really important to put that as well. So ISRCs for all the songs. Then you can have one EN or UPC code, which is the barcode of the physical CD that you're going to sell. So all that information goes in the cue sheet, and we're going to use the software to be able to generate that DDP file for us. Okay, so I'm going to show you how you can create the DDP image we're talking about for free. So here I've got the website where you can download the actual software. So let's start by doing that. So it's called ddp.andreasrouge.de. Not sure if that's how it's pronounced, but it's called DDP Mastering Tools. This is a free tool you can download. So go on the Downloads tab, and I'm going to explain for the Mac OS, but obviously you can do this in different OSs, including Windows. So I think the latest Mac version is DDP Tools 0.8.8. So that's what I'm going to download. So start by downloading the tools. We're going to unzip the tools. So now you have the folder with the actual software. And we're going to need to install that software first. So we're going to open up this program called Terminal. Okay. So it's in your Utilities folder if you can't find it. And this is a command line utility tool. So that means that you can actually navigate into folders and do specific things without using your mouse, but actually by typing things. So it's kind of navigating your computer, but in a different way. So it's not as daunting as you think it looks like. So really simple. I'm going to explain to you a couple of commands that are going to make you a, let's say, temporary hacker. So here, it's telling me that it's in the home folder. So this is kind of where you are in the computer. So home folder means this guy. So we want to go into the folder where we downloaded the tools. And this is the download folder in my case. So let's do CD, which is CD change directory, change folder, meaning. So if you type CD space and then you type the name of the folder you want to go in, you can navigate into that folder. So it's kind of like a game, let's say, you know, a matrix kind of game. So CD downloads, I'm going to type, right? Enter. Now we're in downloads folder. And to check where we are, obviously it says downloads, but also we can type in ls, which is list command. And ls, enter, is going to show you what's in that folder. So here it says DDP tools. So we're in the correct folder. Let's do CD again, space, DDP tools, 0.8.8, enter. Then you're in the folder that we were talking about earlier. So we need to install this. And the command to install this is sudo, which gives you administrative privileges. This will allow you to install things by putting your password in, space, and then ./install.sh. And / just means execute, that file. So when you enter, it's going to ask you for your password, and it's going to install the software. I'm not going to do that because I already did that. But after you've done that step, you can now check that the software is installed correctly. So you do q.ddp, which is the name of the software, space, -- version. So this means I'm going to ask for the version of the software. So if you enter, it's going to say q to DDP tools 0.8.8, which is the version I've installed. So if you see this, that means you're good. You've successfully installed the software. So this is done, Now let's focus on the actual DDP image. So in the desktop folder, I've created a folder called test DDP, right? And this is where we're going to put all the information. So in this folder, we have a cue sheet, like I said, and the WAV file, which I'll show you how you're going to create this. So these are the input files that we're going to have to use for the software. As I said earlier, you just need the cue sheet and the audio. And then we're going to create a new folder in that folder. So let's do create new folder, DDP image, I'm going to call it. You can call it whatever you want, but this is where the output of the DDP image is going to be created. So we're going to have all the files in there at the end of the process. And now let's go on and create the WAV file with the whole album in it. So here in Pro Tools, I've got the session of my latest album, Friends and Animals. So I'm going to use that to show you how I did the DDP image for that album. So here, I put all the 6 songs of my EP back to back. And what I wanted is a gapless album. So that's why you're not going to see any gaps. But obviously, you can move your tracks as you want and put the gaps you want in between the tracks. But just make sure you know how much time is between the tracks. So if you zoom in, you can see that the first track is starting at 0 exactly at the beginning of the session. And then if I tap to the next song, you're going to see that the boundary is really exactly snapped. So the next song starts when the previous song is done. This is the way I want it, but you don't necessarily need to have it snapped like this, So when you have all the songs, back to back in an album fashion, in a linear fashion, you're going to need to bounce this. So just do the bounce, call it whatever you want, and make sure it's in 16-bit 44.1. And if you need to dither from 24-bit, then you need to dither. So bounce this, and then this is the file you're going to have, which in my case is called testddp.wav. So now that you have the whole album into one file, now we need to create the cue file. So what I did is I opened up TextEdit. You can use whatever text editing software you want, but this one is the one I used. Testddp.q is the file name I created. So just create a file and call it like that. And then I'm going to show you the contents of that file. So basically, the first thing I've put is the catalog number, which is an EN or UPC code, which is the barcode of the CD, as I said. So you type catalog, and then space, and then you put the number you want. This is optional, but I had a UPC for mine, so I put that in. Then you have performer, space, and the name of the artist. So in my case, it's Noah's Ark, and I put it in between brackets because that allows for special characters to be properly read by the software, because I have, for example, an apostrophe in my name. Now, title is the title of the album or the release, and this is Friends and Animals. That's it. And then the file. So file is the audio file that the cue sheet is going to refer to when creating the CD, right? So this is called testddp.wav in our case. And then we need to specify the format, which is a WAV format. So that's why you have WAV after. If you have other formats you're using, you need to change this and put the correct format you want. If it's MP3, it's going to be MP3. I'm sure there are other formats you can use like AIFF, but you're going to need to check the documentation of the cue sheet to know how to write it, because this, for example, has an E at the end. So you've got the file that's referred to in this folder, right? And then we're going to specify information about all the tracks. So track 01 is the first track, and then we're going to say audio to specify that it's an audio track, right? Then ISRC, which is the recording code, the international standard. So if you have your code, put it in. I highly recommend you put it in. And this one starts with CA because I'm registered in Canada actually, and then I've got my artist code, and then the year and the release, right? And so ISRC is put, title of the track, When You Dance With Me Again, and then performer. You can add the performer back because sometimes, albums are various artists and there are different performers on each track, so you can specify again if you want. And then you have the indices that you want to use. So In my case, it's a gapless album, so I don't need index 0. I just specified index 01, and that's the beginning of the track, you know. If you want to, you can create a new line, and here you can type index 0 and then put the time for the 0 index. I'm not going to do that right now, but this is how you would put the index 0 and the 01 and create a gap. So let's say there was a gap of 2 seconds, just for practice. Here you would put 0 for index 0, and index 1 you would put 0, 2, because it's 2 seconds in. I'm going to remove this because this is not what's happening in my album. But that's an example of how you would put the pre-gap. Now, for the first track, it's pretty simple because the album starts at 0. Now, the second track is more tricky because you need to find out when the second track starts in terms of CD frames. So, let's go back to Pro Tools. And here, I'm going to tab to the end of the song. And here, you're right at the boundary, right? And we're going to check the minutes and seconds view here. So it says 3 minutes and 1 second and 853 milliseconds. So these need to be converted into CD frames. So remember, there were 75 frames in 1 second, and there are obviously 1,000 milliseconds in a second. So take out the calculator. Here we're going to do 0.853, which is the number of milliseconds here, times 75. And this is going to give us the frame. And so here, you're going to see that the frame doesn't align properly, right? But you always need to round down the number you get here, because otherwise you're going to be ahead of the beginning of your track. You don't want to be later than the beginning of your song. You want to be before. So the closest frame before is 63. So that's why here it says 3 minutes, 1 second, and 63 frames. So you always floor the number, never up. Otherwise, you're going to cut the beginning of your song. So let's do another example. Let's do the next song. So let's tab here. You're at the boundary between the second track and the third track. And then here it says 6 minutes, 46 seconds, and 733 milliseconds. So let's do calculation again. 0.733 times 75. That gives us 54.975. Again, really close to 55, but we need to truncate down, right? So that's why I put 6 minutes, 46 seconds, and 54 frames. And that's how you fill out the other ones. When you've done all the tracks, your cue sheet is done. You're good to go. So now, let's go back to the folder we had here. So the cue sheet is here. You have the WAV file in the same structure and the same folder, and this is where everything is going to go in. So open up Terminal again. Here we're going to do CD, change directory, and then enter right away. This is going to take us back to the home folder. And I need to go to the desktop. So let's do CD desktop. This is going to take me to the desktop. LS is going to show me the contents of that folder. Here we can see the test DDP folder. So let's go in, CD test DDP. We're inside. Here, as you can see, there's the DDP image folder, the test DDP.q file we just created, and the WAV file we bounced earlier. So now we can create the DDP file. So let's type q to DDP, which is the name of the software. It invokes the software, and then q.ddp space, we need to specify the cue sheet. So that's, in this case, test DDP.q. And then we need to say, where do we want the output of this operation? Well, we want it in the DDP image folder. So DDP image, we specify that. And then we just enter. Bam. Then it's doing its thing. Bam, it says done. Okay, so let's check the content of the DDP image folder. Now we've got all the things we need. The checksum are 2 different files. DDP ID, DDP-MS, image.dat, which is the actual audio, and then SD, which is the PQ descriptor. And there you go. You got your DDP image for free. So that's it. I hope you liked this video on how to prepare a DDP file and how to distribute your music on CDs. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, like, comment, share, the usual. And if you could visit the Patreon page, I'd be really grateful. And so I'll see you next time for another video, and thanks for watching. It's often useful to have a CD at your stand to be able to make some extra dosh, because obviously all musicians need a bit more, need to live, need to eat some bread, so